Now, next up is going to be our first panel discussion of the day. The New Retail Revolution is an exciting panel where the CIOs and CDOs of major retail conglomerates will discuss the implementation of omni-channel retail, creating the experiences of the future and ensuring an integrated retail delivery model. The panel is powered by Zeno, and Zeno is the next generation CRM for retail, enabling brands to maximize ROI from their loyalty and loyal customers. It enables retailers to build consumer understanding and run relevant campaigns. Please could you welcome onto the stage your panel, Piyush Kumar Chowhan, the Group CIO of Lulu Group International, Daniel Gomez, the Chief Digital Officer of Malki Group, Phillip Smith, the Head of Digital for KOI, and Sander Maertens, the Head of Middle East for Adyen, and your moderator, Mark Thomson, the Retail Industry Director of Zebra Technologies. Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Good morning. Is it still morning? It's just about, anyway. So, well, first of all, welcome to this, the first of the panel sessions. We're going to try and make this as conversational as possible. I just wanted to make a few comments around what we've already heard in the CEO conclave. And I think there were some really interesting features there. Now, one thing that we were told there is it's now about stories. And I think that's very true. It's no longer about a transaction. It's no longer about buying things simply to have things. It's about consumers coming in and buying things because it forms part of their story. And if we look 20 years back in retail, or even 10 years back in retail, it was about consumers having to come to you as a retailer. So the consumer was doing the effort in that respect. Now it's almost flipped on its head completely. Retailers need to be where the consumer is, because the consumer now has the power, the consumer expectations have changed, whether that's for sustainability, whether that's for fast delivery, whether that's for frictionless experiences in store. So many things have changed. The consumer is very much in control. So we've talked a little bit about some of these challenges and the digital transformations that retailers are making. But at the end of the day, retail is still retail, and that was also talked about this morning. We're all trying to work out who are our customers, how do we engage with them in the right way, where they are at that point in time. Do we need to work with influencers, social media? Do we need to change the staff in our store and empower them more so that the interactions they have with customers are a different level? Does that mean we hire different people? We train them in a different way. We engage customers through our staff in our physical stores. Physical stores will still play a significant role in retail for the coming future. And if we think about, we've talked about millennials and Gen Z, and for me, this shows my age, I think about millennials as being young. The reality is, millennials now reach up to 40 years old. So actually, a lot of the spending power in our retail stores is really controlled by millennials and Gen Z. And these are the people that we need to understand a lot better. Now, the good news for physical stores is in a lot of the research that I've been looking at this year, millennials and Gen Z are actually saying they favor physical in-store experiences. They are looking for that experience. They want to go into stores. So we just have to make sure that the stores meet their expectations and meet their story. So with that as a brief introduction, today's session is going to talk about some of the practicalities. How do we make this happen? How do we get under the skin? How do we get products to the stores? How do we get products to customers? What are the technologies that are going to have to be involved in order to empower this digital transformation? So I've got a great panel with me today, and rather than me introducing them, we've had a brief introduction of their names and their companies, but I'd like each one of them to spend just a couple of minutes introducing themselves and their perspectives on retail transformation. So Piyush, let's start with you.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and future grazing what will come in retail. So I'm Piyush Chowhan. I head the digital and technology charter for Lulu Group. We are obviously a home-known brand in the Middle East region. My experience has been predominantly working with retailers like Tesco, Walmart, and Best Buy in the US and UK. And I'm quite passionate about using digital to transform retail businesses, and we'll kind of talk through some of the things, the way I see it, the way things are evolving, and I think it's a very exciting time for any digital leader for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for the invitation. I'm Daniel Gomez. I work for Malki Group as the Chief Digital Officer. I spent some years before working in Inditex, Zara, and all the brands while I was in Russia. Then I moved to Dubai. I worked a couple of years for Shaloop Group, and now I'm working in Malki, Saudi company. Started as a distribution company. Now we're focused on our growth in retail, but now retail from scratch should be omnichannel. It's a no-brainer. So whatever we're building now, we're thinking on integrating all the channels and providing the best experience to the customers in any channel, offline, online, customer service, a full integrated experience.
Thanks.
Hi, good morning. My name's Phillip Smith. I'm the Group Digital Director for Kamal Osman Jamjoom Group. We operate various brands in fashion, beauty, and toys. Just recently, we've moved into food and beverage as well. So yeah, basically, I'm responsible for e-commerce, any digitization across the group, omnichannel, and any new technologies that we bring into the group to help us expand. So yeah, I've been with the group about 3 years now, and yeah, we like to think that we're kind of moving quite progressively as an omnichannel retailer rather than a traditional retailer.
My name is Sander. I'm the General Manager for Adyen in the Middle East. And for those that do not know who Adyen is, we are a global payments company. So we provide payment services both online as well as in-store. And that means that we do both provide the hardware for payments in physical retail as well as a gateway and acquiring and anti-fraud solutions online. And we do this typically for large enterprise merchants, such as Netflix, Uber, Spotify, but also physically for companies like Nike, Dyson, Rituals. And we quite often find ourselves in a key position when companies talk about digital transformation. So I'm quite excited to be part of this panel and to give some insight on the payments perspective on this new era of retail.
Perfect. Thank you, Xander. Thanks, everyone. And certainly payments are critical because that's certainly the point that people leave the store at. And we know last impressions count. So I'm going to get straight on with the first question here. So as retailers are looking to engage with shoppers in this era of, you might call it omnichannel, you might call it unified commerce. There's various different phrases out there in the marketplace, and I almost think we should move away from some of the terminology and focus back on just retail and dealing with customers. But what are the technologies that are going to be given priority, or that need to be given priority in order to almost create that unified experience? Philip, if I can start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think you need to think about kind of on-premise technology and off-premise. You know, we've implemented various technologies on the back end to make sure that our end-to-end fulfillment of orders is actually reliable and efficient. We've implemented things like Oracle Order Broker that help us orchestrate orders across our entire network, whether that be online or offline. So this kind of brings new capabilities, not just online, but also to the store staff. So it enables us to offer a service if a customer comes into the store and we don't have certain products in stock, then we can actually get that product delivered to their home, or we can get it delivered to the store and they can come back. So it's trying not to miss the opportunity, I suppose, and it's important, particularly now, because if somebody comes into your store and you don't have the certain product in stock and you cannot fulfill their order, one of the first things they're going to do is probably Google or go online to try and find it online, and then you're potentially going to lose that sale to maybe a pure play or another retailer. Now, the other part is kind of off-premise, like I say, is kind of utilizing other apps to fulfill goods. Now, this comes more in the form of things like Deliveroo and InstaShop at the moment. But these technologies are moving quite quickly into retail as well. Quite recently, our Makiage beauty brand just integrated with InstaShop. So basically, you know, we've got back-end technologies that enable us to fulfill from store, but then we're using off-premise technology like InstaShop to enable us to fulfill a local order to a local customer from our local stock. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a cocktail, really. There's not one technology that can help you kind of progress in omnichannel. You've got to really figure out how that all weaves together in a holistic way.
That's a really interesting perspective, because as you say, it's no longer you can just go to one technology company and they have the solution for you, and that allows you to be omnichannel. Let's use that word. It is that mix of different technologies. Because if we're focusing on that customer experience, you mentioned going into store, the product is not in stock, what do you then do? And customers' expectations are that you as a retailer will solve that for them, not that they have to go off and go online and do something else to try and find the product. So I guess it comes back, and Piyush, if you can add some commentary here, are there technologies that can help us there?
Well, although I kind of have a background in technology, but I always believe that technology is not going to solve problem. And if I were to kind of paint a picture of how I see things, one is experience now is valued more than product. Yeah, that's a known fact, which means, but still I can kind of, from what I'm speaking to retailers don't know how to price experience. Yeah, that's a big challenge. Whereas the consumer is kind of screaming out loud saying that I like experience more than products. So that is one problem. The second shift which has happened is the consumer is now in the control of what it wants rather than the retailer being in control of what it's going to offer, yeah, which is a big shift of power. And I think digital is enabling that power in the hands of the consumer. So the consumer is calling the shots. What happened in COVID is actually people said COVID brought transformation, but actually it is the consumer behavior which brought the transformation. Yeah, the consumer has moved on faster than any retailer, be it digital or be it physical retailer. And that, to me, are things where technology has to play a big role. And what technology has to be is, as I've defined it very simply, it has to be digital, native, experiential, omni-channel retail. Yeah, and there are three key words out there. Digital native, yeah, which means that you need to start behaving the way the consumer thinks with the digital in their hands or in their minds. Yeah, that's the first important. Rather than putting in saying that I want to put in a technology, you first think from the customer's point of view, saying that, look, this is the digital experience that the customer is looking for. Point number one. Point number two is experiential. Don't do transactional. Consumers don't care about transactions. Transaction is obviously the ultimate goal, but it is the experience which will lead you to that transaction. So focus on that experience. And obviously, third is omnichannel as a concept has been there, but I'm pretty sure that for the next 20 years, we'll keep on talking about omnichannel, but still we'll not be able to achieve what omnichannel really means from a customer's point of view. So my view is that where you put all your money on technology is build a digital native, experiential, omnichannel retail, and that will create wonders.
Yeah, Daniel, any comments on that?
Well, I think whatever we build has to start with thinking from the customer in the particular market we're working on. We mostly operate in Saudi Arabia, so we have a very digitally native population, young population, so they really interact easily with any digital platform. But then we also have population from distant locations that are very new on this. So how they order online, how they do all this. So these people, they will need support. Sometimes they need to call a customer service team, and the customer service should be ready. They should have the right technology to understand who's calling and have all the information about this customer. So for that, we use our CRM for Salesforce. And also many of these people, they're scared of trying something new. Buying online for them is new, and they're really concerned about the experience. So especially the last mile in remote locations. Then for that, you need to be ready to spread your risk in different players. You cannot risk all in a single last mile provider. So for that, we're using a multi-courier integration partner. It's called Otto, Saudi startup, great product. And we're not thinking about technologies. We're thinking how these technologies help us to deliver the best experience. And finally, I think one of the main technologies is that all technology that has existed for centuries is communication. It's training. We have a lot of turnover in Saudi Arabia. New population are coming young to work in retail, and these people need to be trained. So obviously we need to be on the field, training people, teaching them how to operate and fulfill from the store, talk to the customer. But also some technology that help us is training technology, how we develop training materials that are interactive, easy to understand for the users, and that will help us to accelerate the speed of training of new staff coming to work with us.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I think it's very clear from what everyone on the panel so far has been saying, is that it's really important to have that vision as to what you're trying to achieve first, who the customer is, what experience we actually want that customer to have, and then technology, staff training, etc., then follow on. You can't start with one and try and sort of force it onto the customer. And I think that's what you were saying. And obviously one of those experiences is payments, Sander. How do we make, payments seems to be a painful process at the moment. I'll throw that one at you. How do we solve that one?
Yeah, so my conclusion of the session this morning, and also what you guys have been saying so far, is that there's a lot going on, there's a lot of change going on, and your answer to that is you need have different technologies to accommodate that, and you end up with a cocktail, right? And what we see is that quite often payments is overlooked as a pivotal element to blend it all together, right? Quite often the payment solution chosen is the cheapest one. It's just a terminal in a store. It's just a gateway online. It's not just a terminal in a store. It's not just a gateway online. It's an essential element in the experience that the shopper has. I have my own experience. This weekend, it's exactly a year ago that I arrived here. And at that time, I only had an international card. So the day before flying here, I wanted to buy, I have children, I wanted to buy a baby seat, diapers, all that kind of stuff. So I Googled, you end up on a pure player for children products, card declined, right? I went back to Amazon. No problem, delivered the next day. It was ready in the hotel where I stayed the first days. It was literally there, so great experience. But that local brand had lost my business for a while until I have a local card. So there has been a reason for that company to decline international cards. The same thing happened in stores. I also have an American Express card. It's not everywhere accepted. So you try, because it's not always clear, you try, you get declined. We literally see that this part of the experience is overlooked by retailers. And we're now coming in at a time where this can no longer be. In our company, we provide a platform for both online and offline on a single platform. So we recognize shoppers on all the sales channels, also in the call center. You spoke about call center, same thing on a mobile, it doesn't matter. So in order to provide the solution that you're looking for, our advice is to very properly look at how payments can contribute and tie things together.
Perfect, and clearly, I mean, payments provide some of the data as well, and data is one of the topics I'd like to cover. people talked about data as being the new oil, and actually I wrote an article where I taught that actually data is better than oil because you can reuse data, you can share data amongst other people, whereas oil, you pretty much use it once. So I think it goes even further than that. And when these sessions at Retail Middle East Forum started 10 years ago, I think we were still at a point there where people were not even quite convinced by cloud for storage. They didn't trust it, they didn't understand it. Now I think we've gone beyond that. And actually we're now talking about combinations of cloud and edge computing. So you do what you can at the edge and you store it in the cloud. So you're optimizing both things. So I think retail's moved on quite quickly over that period. But overall, from a data perspective, I mean, Piyush, let's come back to you. How important is data? And have you got any examples of how it's being used?
So obviously, how important is data? Data is the new, I always use the term, data is the new soil. Yeah, it was considered to be oil, but I believe data is the new soil. And the reason is you need to nurture each and every experience, each and every activity, each and every process in your enterprise with data. If you don't do that, that experience, that process, or that activity is not full. And that is the most important. But unfortunately, I was reading some survey, it was very evident that organizations still use less than 10% of data which is available. And there are multiple reasons for it. One of the reasons is data is not available in the form that they would want, point number one. Point number two, the skills which are needed to analyze and use data-driven decision-making is not there. Or B or C, data is siloed, and it does not give you the right view of what the person is looking at. So this fragmented data, siloed data, not having skills, and predominantly not looking at the right scenario of that data from an organization perspective are the ones which are kind of stopping us. And Thomas Davenport, the famous author, I think he wrote the article in HBR in 2001 in which he said that enterprises will be differentiated based on use of data in 2001. And again, he did a survey in 2019, and you could go and refer to his article in HBR again. He said that only, I think, 5 to 6% of organizations were able to do anything meaningful out of use of data. So there is a long way. People have been just doing lip service because it is difficult. I'm not saying that people don't want to do it. It is difficult because our gut feeling and the way of doing business, the acumen of doing business is so much ingrained in human beings that for any kind of experienced professional to give that up and say that I will start believing data almost to a very large extent and then start taking decisions will take at least a generation to pass on. And I think that is where the whole problem lies.
So if I go back to my education, my degree in economics, I was always taught that actually data doesn't have a huge amount of value until it becomes information. And I think we're even moving to the next phase where even the information, so dashboards, etc., don't necessarily have the value until they're turned into insights or even into actions. So I guess, again, to the whole panel, how do we make the data work for the people in the stores, for the customers? How do we make decisions based on that data as opposed to relying on someone to interpret it? Sander?
I think that's the quote of the day, right? Because that's something we also strongly believe in. So when you go to a store and you buy something and walk away, quite often the people in the store have no idea who you were, right? So you're kind of anonymous. So what we're trying to do is give real-time insights on you when you buy something. And it starts with aggregated data. So what are the demographics into a store? Do you get more, if you get a lot of Europeans, but are they mostly Germans or Dutch? I'm Dutch, we're known to be cheap, right? So do we spend less on average in your stores than a German or Brit or a Saudi? That kind of information we're giving back on an aggregated level. Returning shoppers, and how much do returning shoppers spend on average more or less than a first-time shopper, versus comparing online and offline. All that kind of aggregated data or insights. And then we can feed it back in real time based on card usage. So the moment you walk in and you buy something, In real time, our system can tell you, hey, this is a returning shopper, this is a first-time shopper. Of course, it needs to interact with your own systems as well, but that immediate insight on that previously anonymous shopper is extremely valuable. And you can treat certain kind of shoppers differently based on that real-time data being available. And it's not only in retail, it's pretty much in every segment of the market where you're spending money. That insight is extremely crucial to keep that customer. If we talk about newer generations coming up, they kind of expect that, right? They kind of expect to be recognized, appreciated, having a faster checkout, having a VIP experience, because all the apps are giving that, right? So that we consider that to be crucial. So basically, as a retailer, you need to demand higher standards. Do you really accept downtime of your bank between 2 and 5 in the morning? We just heard this morning there are people watching movies and buying stuff online at 2 a.m., people taking taxis in the middle of the night. I wake up early in the morning because of the kids. That's the time before I go to work, I actually do some shopping, right? If there's downtime on the bank side, you lose me. So you're demanding higher standards in that side, but definitely on the data side. So on the as a payment company, we provide those kind of insights.
Those sorts of insights, perfect. Daniel, on similar topics, so we've got this data. So is data the key to the experience, the personalization, and you've got customers coming in who've probably done their research, so they've collected data, they've done research. We heard from the CEO conclave that the kids going into the store have already selected the exact product that they want. So how do we use that data ourselves, what they've researched, and how do we almost share that and empower the staff in the store? Have you got any thoughts on that?
So, for example, with our vision with our e-commerce experience is that this e-commerce data that we're getting from visitors in the website, that not get stuck in a silo. And that's what's happened in many organizations. They build the e-commerce team, the retail team, they talk maybe once every month, but it's a huge opportunity lost there. So obviously the people working in retail, they're not that used to get very granular data. They probably use only to see traffic, conversion, but and maybe some transactional data from the POS, but in e-commerce and customer care data gives them much more insights. So for instance, in our company, what we're building is a very clear process, whereas the e-commerce and customer care team are meeting weekly with the retail teams and sharing a lot of insights in a very easy to understand manner. It's not about presenting a big dashboard and showing off how cool I am with data and I understand, you don't understand. It's like, okay, what is the story behind this data and how can we use this data? So these are our top 10 bestsellers. This is our top 50 landing pages, or these are our top 50 products that people are visiting that are not converting. And this conversation together, involving the people in the field, can really help to make decisions together. There is a lot of knowledge from the store locations that is not really locked in any system, the knowledge from the store staff. That's why it's also very important that our people working in e-commerce and customer service, they visit the stores and they get information. It's not data, it's about context on what's happening in the experience. So it's again, I repeat, it's how we build the communication process between all the teams that can really help to drive. At the end of the day, we're in a retail business, we want to sell. That's what we
Perfect. Philip, on our online businesses, we collect lots of data. It's available to us. We know exactly what pages people have looked at, the journey they took to get there. We don't get that same benefit from our physical stores, or do we? We had a brief conversation outside. How do we leverage our stores, and should we leverage our stores to gain that data on both our customers, but also what's happening?
Yeah, collection of data is obviously the first step, and we've put various projects in place across the group and set targets for retail teams to collect data. So we set a certain percentage on how many customers need to share their data. So yeah, that's like a first step. But I suppose going back to your first point around, okay, we've got the visualization, but without actually turning that into action, it makes everything pointless, right? So last year we had quite a big data transformation project where we needed to pull all of our data in one place. Being an omnichannel retailer, we've got around 700 stores. We've got 9 e-commerce stores, so trying to get that all in one place is quite a big task. So yeah, we set out to put that in one place. We put our data lake in place last year. And now this year what we've moved on to is that next step of how do we turn it into action. Now, what we find is if we find the objective first, so what is the objective, and a project that we worked on recently was like, okay, footfall in the shopping malls may be down, but so basically in retail stores what we need to do is maximize the customers that are there and increase the average transaction value. So we done a deep dive basket analysis into our data, into our store data. We need to use machine learning to do that, because from a human point of view or an Excel sheet, we just can't get there. So yeah, we deployed machine learning to understand, okay, what should we be cross-selling and what should we be upselling? And when you do that, you can do it in 2 ways. You can either set the models to go out and find something that you're looking for, or you can do kind of what we call an untrained model, where it's kind of, okay, let's see what happens. And as a prime example, what we found in one of our brands was we had a really high volume selling product, and the teams were basically ignoring that product because it was like a high volume product, and it was like, okay, that's doing great. We don't need to look at that product. But what we actually found was it was performing really badly when it comes to cross-sell and upsell. So we had this really high volume product, which was people like snatching off the shelves, but we weren't actually selling anything with it. And, without machine learning to go in and help us find that insight, we just wouldn't have found it. And that turned into a project. So, an upsell and cross-sell project in the retail stores. So, yeah, it's kind of starting with that objective and then working back again to the technology, I suppose.
That's a really good point about machine learning and AI, looking at the data, finding out what the patterns are, and then doing something with that as well. So I'm going to shift tack. We've got about 5 minutes left. So we've talked about experience. We've talked about data. Let's get it. We talked about digital. Let's get a little bit more physical. Let's put it that way. And I'm not going to dance. Don't worry. Shoppers want things anywhere, anytime. How do we make that happen? Philip, you did talk about this sort of ecosystem of third parties, if you like a Deliveroo. Are we now reliant on these third parties? Are they now a natural part of this scene? I mean, we've certainly seen some of the valuations of these companies go through the roof, more than the retailers themselves, and they're just the third parties. So what's happening in this space?
Yes, so we've all been familiar with fast food, right? So we've all used Deliveroo, Talabat, and get your food within 30, 60 minutes. That kind of evolved onto supermarkets, the last couple of years, and supermarkets are under pressure right now to be able to fulfill, locally from the store via various apps like InstaShop, and then you've got the pure plays that have come into that sector, like Amazon and Noon. So retail, when you're talking about like fashion and beauty, they've kind of stayed away from it up until now, but we are seeing these local apps expanding their categories. So the example I used earlier with our beauty brand Makiage, listing products on InstaShop, that we're doing it now because we kind of want to do it. Whereas I think in the next couple of years, it's going to turn into you're going to have to do it because as these apps kind of expand their categories, you're going to have to be able to keep up and fulfill for those apps. Because when somebody orders on InstaShop, they expect the product to be there within an hour, not later today or tomorrow. So it's very easy to list your products on these apps, but to actually fulfill them is very difficult, because if you try and fill it from an e-com point of view, your distribution center could be like another city away, so you can't actually fulfill from there. So it goes back to that store fulfillment, you know, making sure that you've got local stores with local shops fulfilling local customers through these localized apps, basically.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's almost turning full circle, isn't it? Since e-commerce began, e-commerce went to these wonderfully automated fulfillment centers, but because now the promise is an hour, or even in some cases 15 minutes, we actually have to go back to store to do the fulfillment, or something far more local, the hyper-local approach. So Piyush, 15-minute deliveries, is that what I can expect from Lulu?
Well, we've done a survey, and what we have found that's a very small segment. It's a new kid in the block, for sure. Everybody's trying. Whether it is feasible and does it have any unit economies, only the customer will decide. So we have launched express delivery already, which is a 1-hour delivery. We believe that is a promise that we can live with, and we're trying to explore that. But having said that, why this is happening is there are two extremes, yeah, and that you have to understand that there is a consumer which likes planned purchase, yeah, and if you do a survey worldwide, 80% of the consumers still are in the habit of having planned purchase. Nobody says, okay, I want to have pasta now, I want to have it in 10 minutes. If you do a survey, that percentage would be very, very low, yeah? Because people have been brought up in a sense in which saying that, what do I eat on the day, next day, or the next day, and things like that. So that transition to that 15-minute thing is just an instant gratification. And since there is a huge surge of money which is coming into it, they're trying to experiment it. It will lie somewhere between the planned delivery, which is the next day delivery, to that 15-minute delivery, somewhere between that. So the same day delivery will be a reality, and I think everybody is working towards that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not having one or the other. It's actually now having a combination, which unfortunately adds to the complexity. And retail is not getting simpler, is it? It's getting more and more complex. Daniel, have you got experiences on the sort of this rush for faster and faster delivery?
Well, in certain categories, for sure. So we have a chocolate business, Neuhaus, Belgian chocolate. And for this type of product, we'll see demand. People, I have a craving, I want to get chocolates. I have a party tonight, I need chocolates to offer to my guests. Also some beauty products. We mostly operate in luxury brands, and I think part of the experience in luxury is the expectation. Like, okay, I order something beautiful, expensive. I'm willing to wait, okay, not 1 week anymore, but I can wait till next day. Or in main cities, we'll strive to do same-day delivery. I don't see at this stage, and we'll have to follow what the customer wants. I don't see someone ordering a $5,000 ring to be delivered in 30 minutes. It's usually this type of purchases that are very well analyzed, and people compare, and finally they made the purchasing decision, so they're willing to wait. But definitely, in any case, we have to be ready for that. Store fulfillment is there. The role of the store staff is changing, so you also need to be very clear on the expectations. It's not only about talking to people and being very nice to them and engaging with them. They also have to be, especially in luxury, they have to be amazing packers. They have to do the packaging experience with the very, very small detail. That requires training, that requires quality checks, continuous work. So we have to be ready for that, and we're working definitely on this direction.
Perfect, thank you. We are unfortunately out of time. We could talk about the technologies and the goals and the experiences for far longer. But I want to thank the panel. I guess in conclusion, we've realized that the data is absolutely key and is the new soil. And so we have to make sure we nurture the data, we use the data, but we turn it into insights and we turn it into actions. We know that retail is getting more complex, and we have to involve a much wider ecosystem of suppliers, providers, in order to meet the expectations of this rapidly changing consumer. So with that, thank you very much to the panel. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.